The knife never comes from the front. If it did, you'd have seen it. You would have braced. You would have fought back. The front is where declared enemies stand. The front is where honest confrontations happen. But you were not in a war. You were at dinner. You were laughing. You were sitting across from someone who knew your plans, your fears, and the exact shape of your weaknesses, and you trusted them with all of it. That is why you are bleeding. Think about the last time someone truly damaged you. Not a stranger, not a competitor. Someone close. Someone who knew your password, your anxieties, the version of yourself you showed only in unguarded moments. They didn't attack you from a distance. They walked in through the door you held open. And here is the part that stays with you long after the damage is done. The signs were there. Looking back, with the cold clarity that only comes after the fact, you can see the shape of it. The way they deflected certain questions. The way loyalty was always a topic of conversation, but never a demonstrated behavior. The way they called themselves honest every time they were preparing to be anything but. You painted those flags white. You told yourself a story that made the warning signs feel like character quirks. You wanted to believe in this person, so you cooperated with the illusion. Here is what self-improvement culture will never tell you. The problem isn't that you trusted too easily. The problem is that you never learned how to read people, not their words, not their performed warmth, but their actual behavioral architecture. You've been making a critical decision who to trust, who to let inside your walls using the wrong instruments. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this 500 years before behavioral psychology had language for it. In 1513, he sat in a Florentine farmhouse after being arrested, tortured, stripped of his career, and exiled from the city he had served for 15 years, not by his enemies, but by the people he had spent a lifetime building relationships with. He didn't write a memoir. He didn't go looking for redemption. He wrote The Prince, the most brutally honest manual on human nature and power dynamics ever produced. The Prince was not a book for comfortable people. It was a field guide for survivors. And the central thesis running through every chapter is this: men are not inherently loyal. They are temporarily aligned. Alignment ends when the calculation changes. What happens after that alignment ends, that is the education most people never receive. This video is that education. There are 3 specific behavioral patterns that identify a person who cannot sustain genuine loyalty, not because they're monstrous, but because of how they are structurally built. These patterns show up in the people closest to you. They disguise themselves as virtues. They look like openness, maturity, and moral conviction. To most people, they register as green flags. That is the entire mechanism. By the time this is over, you will look at your circle with different eyes. Certain names will come to mind. A specific tightness in your chest is not paranoia. That is clarity, arriving later than it should have. There is a particular kind of naivety that doesn't look like naivety. It looks like optimism. It looks like emotional generosity. It looks like the decision to see the best in people. In a social context, it gets rewarded. People call you warm, open, easy to be around. But in the real architecture of power and human behavior, this same quality functions as a structural weakness, one that skilled manipulators identify within the first conversation. The mechanism behind it is what we might call the projection of virtue. You are, in all likelihood, a person who keeps commitments. When you say you'll show up, you show up. When you give loyalty, you give it fully. Because you operate this way, you naturally assume that others share the same baseline. It's not a conscious decision, it's an automatic cognitive transfer. You project your own behavioral standards onto people who have never demonstrated them. Machiavelli identified this error in The Prince with characteristic directness. He wrote that a man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good. The operative phrase is, so many. He wasn't describing rare exceptions. He was describing the statistical norm of human behavior under pressure. This is a calibrated position, not a cynical one. There is a meaningful difference between believing people are evil and understanding that people are primarily self-interested, and that this self-interest, under the right pressures, will override almost every stated commitment. To understand why trust functions the way it does, you have to understand the 4 laws of human behavior that Machiavelli built his entire political philosophy on. These aren't theoretical abstractions. They are observable dynamics that play out in every relationship you've ever had. The first law is that people are governed by need, not by principle. Nobody is loyal to you as a person. They are loyal to the version of circumstances in which knowing you serves a function. The moment you stop fulfilling that function through success, through change, through simply no longer being useful in the way you once were, the loyalty recalculates, often without the other person even being conscious of it. Machiavelli noted that men change their rulers willingly, hoping to better themselves. And this observation extends far beyond politics. It reaches into friendship, professional alliance, romantic partnership, and family dynamics. The uncomfortable truth embedded in human behavior is that most of what we call loyalty is actually prolonged mutual utility. The second law concerns gratitude, and it is perhaps the most counterintuitive finding in Machiavelli's entire body of work. Gratitude is the weakest emotion in the human repertoire. He wrote that men forget the death of their father sooner than the loss of their patrimony. In modern terms, people forget what you did for them faster than they forget what they lost because of you. More unsettling is the inverse pattern, the paradox of generosity. When you do an enormous amount for someone over time, you create a debt that can become psychologically unbearable for the person carrying it. Some people resolve that discomfort not by reciprocating, but by finding reasons to discount what you did, to reframe your motives, or to turn against you entirely. The people who eventually betray you most severely are often not those you did the least for. They are the ones you did the most for. The third law concerns fear and love as binding forces. Machiavelli's argument in The Prince that it is safer to be feared than loved when you cannot have both is routinely misread as a prescription for cruelty. That is not the point. The point is architectural. Love is a bond held by the other party. They can release it. Admiration, affection, warmth, all of these depend on circumstances that you cannot fully control. The implication for how to read people is this: an alliance held together exclusively by emotional bonds will survive only until the moment when maintaining that bond becomes costly. Real alliances require something more structural than feeling. They require aligned interest situations in which your failure is also their failure and your success is also their success. The fourth law is the one that makes all 3 signs of betrayal possible. The most sophisticated human skill, the one that separates predators from prey in Machiavelli's world, is concealment. He wrote that everyone sees what you appear to be, and few experience what you really are. This is a technical observation, not a moral one. Human beings are extraordinarily capable of presenting a version of themselves that serves a strategic purpose. The most dangerous practitioners don't even know they're doing it. They have been performing a version of themselves for so long that the performance has become indistinguishable from identity. This is why Stoic philosophy, which ran parallel to Machiavellian thinking in many respects, emphasized looking past words and public presentation to the actual record of behavior. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that the measure of a man is what he does with power, not what he says about power, not how he presents himself in the absence of it, but what he actually does when he holds it. The Stoics and Machiavelli agreed on more than either tradition's modern interpreters tend to acknowledge, and the agreement centered on this: trust what behavior reveals, never what rhetoric claims. Before we can talk about how to read people, about identifying the signs of betrayal before the damage is done, you need to sit with these 4 laws. They reframe everything. They tell you that trust is a conclusion to be verified, not a feeling to be experienced. They tell you that the most dangerous people in your environment are often the ones who feel safest, because safety is a signal they have learned to manufacture. And they tell you that the self-improvement that actually protects you doesn't make you more open and vulnerable. It sharpens your ability to see through surfaces to structural reality. With that foundation in place, we can look at the 3 signs. These 3 behavioral patterns are not obvious. They don't look like toxic people warning signs from a self-help article. They look, in the moment, like emotional depth, social sophistication, and moral seriousness. That is precisely what makes them effective. And that is exactly why Machiavelli, who spent decades watching the most politically skilled operators in Renaissance Italy, documented them with such precision. Sign 1. The weaponized confessor. Within hours of meeting Thomas at a work conference, a dinner party, a professional introduction, he had told you something heavy: his father's death, a failed business that cost him everything, a relationship that he said changed how he viewed the entire world. He shared it the way you share things you've carried alone for a long time, with the specific quality of someone who has finally found a person safe enough to let the weight down. You felt it, the pull of being trusted that quickly, that deeply. Something in you responded, a warmth, a protectiveness, a quiet pride in being the person this stranger had chosen to open up to. You thought, this is real, this is rare, this is the beginning of something genuine. You were wrong about what it was, even if you weren't wrong that it was rare. What you experienced is one of the most psychologically sophisticated mechanics in the entire spectrum of toxic people behavior, and it operates specifically on intelligent, empathetic individuals. It targets your capacity for depth. The more you value genuine connection, the more effectively this particular hook lands. Machiavelli called this type of maneuver a false fortress fortezza falsa in his original Italian. The structure presents as open, vulnerable, and in need of protection. The actual architecture underneath is a trap. Here is how the mechanics work. When someone shares a secret with you, particularly an emotionally weighted one, they install an obligation, not a spoken one, a social one operating below the level of conscious awareness. In every functional culture, the exchange of vulnerability is governed by the norm of reciprocity. You give me yours, I give you mine. When they open up, the social contract in your nervous system registers. You owe them the same. So you lower your shield. You share your own anxieties, your professional pressures, the private architecture of your insecurities. You believe you are bonding. You are handing them a map. This is what Machiavelli meant when he observed that men are driven by debt as much as by love or fear. A carefully constructed emotional debt is one of the most durable binding mechanisms available, because the person carrying it doesn't experience it as a trap. They experience it as intimacy. The deeper diagnostic here involves a fundamental principle about boundaries. A person with no psychological architecture around their own private information has no real structure of self-protection, which means they have no architecture for protecting yours either. Think about what their behavior is actually telling you. They have known you for 48 hours. They don't know your character, your history, or your actual track record. The fact that they are sharing profound vulnerability anyway tells you something critical about how they relate to trust itself. For them, It's a tool deployed for effect, not a conclusion earned through demonstrated behavior. Real trust is slow. This is one of the places where Stoic philosophy and Machiavellian analysis converge absolutely. The Romans didn't grant inner circle access based on emotional first impressions. The Spartans didn't build alliance on shared confession. You entered the trusted circle by demonstrating your character over time, under pressure, in situations where betrayal would have been easier and more available. Seneca, writing to his friend Lucilius, made the point with characteristic precision. Before you admit a person to your confidence, consider whether you have first admitted them to your judgment. The weaponized confessor is trying to bypass that process entirely. They want a shortcut from stranger to intimate, without crossing the territory in between, because that territory is where character is revealed. And their character would not survive the exposure. There are 3 distinct variants of this pattern, and recognizing them matters because they require different responses. The first is the chronic martyr. Life, for this person, is an unbroken sequence of crises. Every time you believe you've helped them through something, the situation evolves into a new emergency of identical emotional weight. They are looking for a permanent witness, someone present for the ongoing drama of their suffering. The trap is that leaving, once you are established in the witness role, triggers an accusation of abandonment that is psychologically engineered to hold you in place. The second variant is the mirror. This person reflects your specific experience back at you with uncanny precision. They have been through exactly what you've been through. They understand the specific betrayal you described in a way that no one else ever has. The overlap is too perfect to be coincidence, and you're right, it isn't. This is a deliberate technique. They have been listening for the emotional architecture of your history and constructing a parallel narrative that fits it. It bypasses your defenses because you're not evaluating a stranger's confession. You're recognizing your own reflection. The technical name in psychology is mirroring. Machiavelli would have recognized it instantly as the most elegant form of the false fortress, requiring no explicit deception, only attention and patience. The third variant is the exclusive savior. This person shares their vulnerability and immediately establishes that you, specifically, are the only one capable of carrying it with them. You are uniquely suited to understanding. You are the only person they've ever felt genuinely safe with. The specialness is a cage built from your own need to matter. You are being positioned, not chosen. The loyalty test here is direct and immediate. The next time this person comes to you with a crisis, a demand, or a request for your time and energy, say no. Without elaboration, without apology, without a softer version of the same refusal. Just say, I don't have the bandwidth for this right now. Then observe what follows. A person who came to you in genuine connection accepts it. They say they understand, and they move on without drama. The weaponized confessor does the opposite. The reaction will be disproportionate guilt induction, sudden coldness, accusations of abandonment, or a pivot to barely concealed anger. This reaction is the diagnostic. It reveals that what was presented as connection was actually a contract, and you just violated the terms. When saying no once ends the relationship was never what it appeared to be. Machiavelli's counsel on this is direct. Accept what they offer, observe what it reveals, and give nothing in return until behavior has been demonstrated over time and under pressure. A secret shared too soon is leverage, not intimacy. The person genuinely seeking connection earns access through demonstrated character. The person running a mechanism reveals themselves the moment they realize the mechanism isn't working. If this is already reshaping how you see your circle, drop a comment below with the sign that made you think of someone. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. I read every single one. Sign 2. The pathological neutral. You know this person. They are well-liked. They move through social environments with an ease that you've probably admired at some point, maintaining friendships across groups that should, by the logic of conflict and genuine loyalty, be mutually exclusive. When you asked them about it once, they said something that sounded like wisdom. I just don't think everything has to be a war. I can see where everyone is coming from. When someone wronged you publicly, demonstrably, in a way that required no nuance to interpret this person was in the room. They saw it. They knew the full context. And when you looked to them for the acknowledgement that any genuine ally would provide, they offered you something that wore the clothing of maturity. I hear you. But I also understand where he was coming from. I don't want to get in the middle of this. That sentence is among the most significant signs of betrayal you will ever encounter in human behavior. And it arrives dressed in the language of reason. In The Prince, Machiavelli dedicates an entire chapter to what he calls the fatal error of neutrality, specifically in the context of conflicts between powers. The argument is architectural. When two forces are in conflict, the person who refuses to declare a position is not preserving peace. They are calculating safety. They are running a risk assessment in which your need for an ally is weighed against the potential cost of making an enemy. When they choose neutrality, they are telling you the result of that calculation. In his original Italian, the structure presents as open, vulnerable, and in need of protection. The actual architecture underneath is a trap. Here is how the mechanics work. When someone shares a secret with you, particularly an emotionally weighted one, they install an obligation, not a spoken one, a social one, operating below the level of conscious awareness. In every functional culture, the exchange of vulnerability is governed by the norm of reciprocity. You give me yours, I give you mine. When they open up, the social contract in your nervous system registers. You owe them the same. So you lower your shield. You share your own anxieties, your professional pressures, the private architecture of your insecurities. You believe you are bonding. You are handing them a map. This is what Machiavelli meant when he observed that men are driven by debt as much as by love or fear. A carefully constructed emotional debt is one of the most durable binding mechanisms available, because the person carrying it doesn't experience it as a trap. They experience it as intimacy. The deeper diagnostic here involves a fundamental principle about boundaries. A person with no psychological architecture around their own private information has no real structure of self-protection, which means they have no architecture for protecting yours either. Think about what their behavior is actually telling you. They have known you for 48 hours. They don't know your character, your history, or your actual track record. The fact that they are sharing profound vulnerability anyway tells you something critical about how they relate to trust itself. For them, it's a tool deployed for effect, not a conclusion earned through demonstrated behavior. Real trust is slow. This is one of the places where stoic philosophy and Machiavellian analysis converge absolutely. The Romans didn't grant inner circle access based on emotional first impressions. The Spartans didn't build alliance on shared confession. You entered the trusted circle by demonstrating your character over time, under pressure, in situations where betrayal would have been easier and more available. Seneca, writing to his friend Lucilius, made the point with characteristic precision. Before you admit a person to your confidence, consider whether you have first admitted them to your judgment. The weaponized confessor is trying to bypass that process entirely. They want a shortcut from stranger to intimate without crossing the territory in between, because that territory is where character is revealed. And their character would not survive the exposure. There are three distinct variants of this pattern. and recognizing them matters because they require different responses. The first is the chronic martyr. Life, for this person, is an unbroken sequence of crises. Every time you believe you've helped them through something, the situation evolves into a new emergency of identical emotional weight. They are looking for a permanent witness, someone present for the ongoing drama of their suffering. The trap is that leaving, once you are established in the witness role, triggers an accusation of abandonment that is psychologically engineered to hold you in place. The second variant is the mirror. This person reflects your specific experience back at you with uncanny precision. They have been through exactly what you've been through. They understand the specific betrayal you described in a way that no one else ever has. The overlap is too perfect to be coincidence, and you're right, it isn't. This is a deliberate technique. They have been listening for the emotional architecture of your history and constructing a parallel narrative that fits it. It bypasses your defenses because you're not evaluating a stranger's confession. You're recognizing your own reflection. The technical name in psychology is mirroring. Machiavelli would have recognized it instantly as the most elegant form of the false fortress, requiring no explicit deception, only attention and patience. The third variant is the exclusive savior. This person shares their vulnerability and immediately establishes that you, specifically, are the only one capable of carrying it with them. You are uniquely suited to understanding. You are the only person they've ever felt genuinely safe with. The specialness is a cage built from your own need to matter. You are being positioned, not chosen. The loyalty test here is direct and immediate. The next time this person comes to you with a crisis, a demand, or a request for your time and energy, say no. Without elaboration, without apology, without a softer version of the same refusal. Just say, I don't have the bandwidth for this right now. Then observe what follows. A person who came to you in genuine connection accepts it. They say they understand, and they move on without drama. The weaponized confessor does the opposite. The reaction will be disproportionate guilt induction, sudden coldness, accusations of abandonment, or a pivot to barely concealed anger. This reaction is the diagnostic. It reveals that what was presented as connection was actually a contract, and you just violated the terms. When saying no once ends the relationship was never what it appeared to be. Machiavelli's counsel on this is direct. Accept what they offer, observe what it reveals, and give nothing in return. Sign 3, the moral grandstander. Before we go further, notice something about the structure of what we've been examining. Each of the 3 signs we're covering shares a defining characteristic. They look, from the outside, like admirable qualities. The first sign looks like emotional openness. The second sign looks like mature even-handedness. The third looks like moral seriousness. This is a design feature, not a coincidence. Human beings are sophisticated readers of social performance. We have been reading behavioral signals for status, trustworthiness, and alliance potential since long before we had language to describe what we were doing. The most effective manipulation patterns have evolved through generations of interpersonal competition to specifically target those reading mechanisms to present precisely what the observer is looking for. Knowing how to read people means knowing that this targeting is deliberate, even when the person doing it isn't conscious of the fact. Marcus Whitfield was the most visibly ethical person in his professional environment. Everyone knew it because Marcus made certain of that. He shared thoughtful posts about integrity in leadership. He called out dishonest behavior in meetings with a directness that others found impressive. He positioned himself as the conscience of the group, the person willing to say the uncomfortable thing. to hold the line when others would compromise. When he told you, early in the relationship, that he never lied, stated quietly. As a matter of fact, rather than a boast, you believed him completely. The Stoics had a name for what Marcus was doing, though they would have recognized it as the precise inversion of their own tradition. Stoic philosophy placed zero value on the performance of virtue. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca. All three wrote consistently about the difference between appearing good and being good. And they located that distinction precisely in the relationship between public behavior and private action. For the Stoics, virtue practiced privately without an audience was the only virtue worth the name. The moral grandstander practices the opposite standard. Virtue performed publicly, specifically because it has an audience. In clinical psychology, the pattern has a formal name: reaction formation. When a person cannot tolerate a true aspect of their own character, they unconsciously suppress it and perform its opposite with obsessive intensity. The person who loudly and repeatedly proclaims their hatred of drama is announcing something about their own relationship to drama. The person who insists on their radical honesty at every available opportunity is signaling something about the role deception actually plays in their experience. Machiavelli formulated this observation without the vocabulary of psychology, but with complete accuracy. He wrote in The Prince that it is not necessary to have all the virtues, but it is absolutely necessary to appear to have them. He was describing how the game is actually played. What he couldn't fully account for, writing in the 16th century, was the degree to which sophisticated modern performers have internalized this principle to the point of genuine self-deception. The moral grandstander in your life often doesn't know they're running a manipulation. They have performed their virtue for so long and so consistently that the performance has become their actual self-concept. When you challenge it, their outrage is real. That genuine outrage is, paradoxically, what makes them so difficult to confront, and what makes understanding signs of betrayal in this form so critical. The weaponization operates through three specific mechanisms, and understanding how to read people who use these requires seeing each one clearly. The first is moral licensing. Psychological research in self-regulation has documented a consistent pattern. When a person performs a virtuous act publicly, they subsequently grant themselves permission to behave worse in private, often without conscious awareness that the trade is happening. The moral grandstander's public performance of virtue functions as a credit account. Every donation announced, every ethical stance proclaimed, every sacrifice narrated, these are deposits that fund private withdrawal. The public theater of goodness is the permission structure for private exploitation. The second mechanism is language control. The moral grandstander works often without explicit intent to become the definitional authority in their social environment. They establish what counts as loyalty, what constitutes betrayal, what it means to be a good person. When they control the definitions, they can reframe any accusation against them as a failure of understanding on the accuser's part. You didn't just criticize them. You misunderstood what real caring looks like. You failed to recognize genuine sacrifice when it was right in front of you. The definitions are constructed to make accountability grammatically impossible within the shared language of the group. The third mechanism is what we might call the sacred cow dynamic. They attach themselves to values of such social weight, family, loyalty, sacrifice, community, faith, that they become personally associated with those values in the minds of people around them. To criticize them as individuals is therefore to appear to attack the value they embody. When David disagreed with William's handling of a specific situation and said so directly, William didn't respond to the content of the criticism. He said, "After everything I've done for this family, after every sacrifice I've made, this is how you see me." The conversation shifted immediately from a specific disagreement to an implicit accusation that David was attacking the concept of family loyalty itself. This is a precisely constructed rhetorical trap. It can't be engaged directly. It can only be recognized and stepped around. There are three variants of the moral grandstander worth distinguishing. The first is the political martyr. This person uses group identity, ideological, cultural, demographic, as permanent moral armor. Individual criticism of their behavior becomes, through the move they make, an attack on the entire group they represent. They are inoculated against accountability by association. Any critique of them as a person gets elevated to a critique of everyone who shares their identity, which in most modern contexts makes them effectively untouchable in any social environment that takes those identities seriously. The second variant is the family savior. In close groups, biological family, long-standing friend circles, or professional teams, this is the person who has positioned themselves as the one who keeps everything together, who sacrifices most, who holds the center. They make certain this is known. The sacrifice is sometimes real. Its function is consistently transactional. It operates as an ongoing invoice, presented in moments of conflict or inconvenience, always carrying the implicit message: given everything I have given up for all of you, you lack the standing to hold me accountable. The bill is always larger than any single relationship can pay. The third variant is the performative humble. They regularly diminish themselves in conversation, their achievements, their intelligence, their certainty about things they are, in fact, highly certain about. This self-diminishment appears selectively in contexts where the modesty produces a specific effect, where the display of humility is so striking that it draws more attention than confidence would have. The tell is in what happens when you take the self-assessment at face value. A genuinely humble person accepts your agreement comfortably. The performative version doesn't. The humility was a line cast for a specific response, and acceptance wasn't it. The loyalty test for this pattern requires cutting the fuel supply. The moral grandstander runs on validation, on confirmation that their goodness registers and matters. When you withdraw that confirmation, when you treat their announced ethical stances as ordinary rather than remarkable, the architecture becomes visible. Some will escalate their performance, manufacturing increasingly dramatic scenarios that demand a response. Others will pivot to devaluation, finding subtle reasons to be disappointed in you, questioning your values, noting your distance. Both responses reveal the same underlying structure. What was presented as unconditional care was conditional on your continued role as audience. Machiavelli's warning about this type of person is the most visually striking passage in all of The Prince. The wolf does not knock on the door and announce himself. He takes the skin of the sheep, he bleats, he grazes, he waits. When you find yourself in the presence of someone who works conspicuously hard to convince you of their character, the strategic question is what the performance is designed to distract you from. In almost every case, the answer is a void where genuine care should be, filled instead by calculation and hands already in the process of taking something. Stop pretending the failure to recognize these patterns is a personal failing of some kind. The architecture of all three behavioral types is specifically designed to exploit the cognitive wiring of intelligent, empathetic people. These patterns evolve through individual iteration and social selection over generations to target the exact qualities that make someone a valuable ally: depth, loyalty, and the genuine willingness to invest in other people. That said, a specific cognitive mechanism keeps these patterns invisible longer than they should be, and understanding it is the first step in dismantling it. The mechanism is called normalcy bias. The human nervous system is wired to assume continuity. Because something has not changed, it will not change. Because someone has not betrayed you today, they will not betray you ever. The brain resists updating on evidence that disrupts established categories. It requires the disruption to be severe and undeniable before it will accept it. In stable environments, this is adaptive. In the context of interpersonal dynamics, it is the cognitive equivalent of leaving the gate unlocked because you don't remember ever being robbed. The bias has specific emotional support structures. Acknowledging that someone close to you displays the signs of betrayal we've been examining requires a cascade of consequences. You have to confront them, or strategically withdraw, or sit with the grief of a relationship that isn't what you believed it was. Each of these options involves a cost. The ego, which is already invested in the narrative of this person's trustworthiness, will work aggressively to avoid paying that cost. So it generates defenses. For the weaponized confessor, the defense runs, "She's just been through a lot. She opens up because she trusts me." For the pathological neutral, the story is, "He's not confrontational by nature. He just doesn't like taking sides." For the moral grandstander, the rationalization is, "Yes, he talks about his ethics a lot, but that's because he genuinely cares." Each defense is a translation of the same underlying operation: the ego protecting an existing investment. The decision to see these patterns clearly is a willingness to accept a loss on a sunk cost rather than continue investing in something structurally compromised. There is a second dynamic worth naming here: the paradox of the self-convinced betrayer. Most people who perform the acts of betrayal we've been describing do not experience themselves as betraying anyone. They have constructed an internal narrative in which their behavior is justified, reasonable, and arguably virtuous. He changed first. She was never really honest with me. I had to protect myself. This narrative is not cynical construction. It is genuine. They believe it completely. The practical implication is significant. Stop waiting for confession. Stop expecting that the person who ran the mechanism on you will ever acknowledge what they did. In the story they tell themselves, they are the protagonist who survived difficult circumstances. You appear, if at all, as part of the circumstances, not as the one who was wronged. The closure you're looking for through their acknowledgement doesn't exist and was never going to be offered. Walking away without it is the move. The silence on your end is precision. It is the recognition that the final word you're looking for was never available in that relationship, and that continuing to look for it there is the last hold the pattern has on you. Knowing the signs is the beginning of the work. The knowledge becomes useful only when it translates into changed behavior specifically. A different way of structuring your social environment, and a different set of standards for who gains access to your trust, your time, and your energy. The first principle of response is tactical restraint. When you have identified one of these patterns in someone close to you, the impulse is the dramatic exit, the confrontation, the declaration, the withdrawal with explanation. This is almost always the wrong action. Confronting a skilled manipulator gives them one final opportunity to deploy the mechanism. The weaponized confessor will make you the abuser in the story. The pathological neutral will somehow find a position that leaves you looking unreasonable. The moral grandstander will mobilize their entire constructed identity against the accusation in a way that leaves you appearing to be exactly what they claim. The master-level response is gradual disappearance. Become less available. Reduce response times. Add friction to every interaction. Become boring. Become busy. You are making yourself a less rewarding environment for the behaviors these people depend on. The weaponized confessor needs a receptive audience. Give them diminishing returns. The pathological neutral needs a strong person to stand behind, withdraw the shelter. The moral grandstander needs validation, stop providing it. Each of these people will eventually redirect their energy toward more hospitable environments, without requiring a scene, a confrontation, or a version of events that can be weaponized against you later. The second principle is rebuilding according to different criteria. The way most people construct their social circles relies on proximity, shared history, and emotional chemistry. These are real inputs, but they are not the inputs that predict loyalty. Machiavelli's framework for identifying reliable alliance is characteristically unsentimental. The most reliable ally is the person whose failure is genuinely tied to yours, someone for whom your loss is also a loss, and your success creates something real for them too. The math works in a way that doesn't require constant emotional management. The second criterion is temporal. Real loyalty doesn't accelerate, it accumulates. The person still standing after your worst season, who had nothing tangible to gain from maintaining the relationship during that period, who showed up when showing up was costly, that person you can trust. They have passed the only test that matters, demonstrating that their commitment survives the removal of incentive. The third criterion concerns behavior in low-stakes invisibility. How does this person treat you when there is no social audience? When nothing is being observed and nothing is on the line? The curated performance drops. The person who is exactly the same toward you in public and in private, who treats a minor commitment with the same seriousness as a major one, who is consistent across contexts, is demonstrating a structural integrity that is genuinely rare and genuinely valuable. Machiavelli's framework for personal power, which he laid out through the figure of the effective leader in The Prince. Someone possessing both the strength of a lion and the cunning of a fox applies directly to the way you build your social architecture. He wrote that the lion cannot protect itself from traps, and the fox cannot defend itself from wolves. So one must therefore be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to deal with wolves. Most people default to one mode. Either they are excellent at strategy and analysis but avoid direct confrontation, or they are capable of direct action, but miss the subtle intelligence that identifies threats before they materialize. Self-improvement at this level means developing both. Fox intelligence means running the 3 diagnostic frameworks we've covered before the emotional investment is made. It means asking before you extend trust what function this relationship serves for the other party, what their demonstrated behavioral record looks like under pressure, and whether their behavior in unobserved moments is consistent with how they present publicly. Lion strength means the capacity to hold a boundary clearly and without apology, to force a public declaration when one is needed, and to withdraw entirely without drama, without justification when the diagnostic makes clear that the investment has no structural future. These 2 modes of operating, applied together and guided by clear criteria, constitute the actual substance of what Machiavelli was prescribing when he wrote about the nature of effective power. It is not cruelty, and it is not manipulation. It is the perceptual and behavioral architecture of someone who has moved past the stage where they can be taken by surprise. There is one final examination required before this framework is complete, and it is the one most people skip because it is more demanding than everything else we've covered. The subject of it is you. Every sign of betrayal we have examined has an internal counterpart. The same patterns that make other people dangerous in your environment can, without self-awareness, appear in your own behavior, often in forms that feel completely justified from the inside. Look at the weaponized confessor. Have you used your own pain, your history, or your vulnerability as a claim on other people's attention and obligation? Have you shared something difficult too early in a relationship, not because you trusted the person, but because you needed the emotional response? Because the sharing created a bond that felt safer than building one through slower, more demanding means? The self-improvement conversation that actually changes how you move through the world begins with honesty about this. Look at the pathological neutral. Think of the last time someone you cared about was in a real conflict, not a trivial one, but a genuine moment where they needed someone in their corner. Think about whether you gave them what they needed or whether you managed your own risk instead. The drift into neutrality is gradual and self-rationalizing. Each individual instance of it feels like wisdom. The cumulative pattern is the thing worth examining honestly. Look at the moral grandstander. Are there values or qualities in your life that you announce more frequently than you demonstrate? Is there a gap between the ethical standard you claim in conversation and the one that actually governs your behavior when no one who knows that claim is watching? Stoic philosophy called this gap between stated values and lived ones the primary corruption, not dramatic evil, but the slow erosion of self-respect that comes from habitual performance substituted for actual practice. Machiavelli closed the circle on this with a line that has endured through 5 centuries of translation and paraphrase. It is double pleasure to deceive the deceiver. The version that applies here is more uncomfortable. The person most skilled at deceiving themselves about their own nature is precisely the person most vulnerable to being deceived by others. The clarity required to see the 3 signs in your environment is identical to the clarity required to see them in yourself, and it cannot be maintained selectively. You cannot be clear-eyed about other people's patterns while remaining willfully blind to your own. This is what Machiavelli was actually pointing toward when his philosophy is read fully rather than in excerpts. He was arguing for navigation with clear eyes, the kind of clarity that serves genuine relationship rather than replacing it. The historical record of the man himself, in his correspondence and in the evidence of who he actually was in private life, reveals someone capable of deep loyalty, genuine warmth, and sustained commitment. His philosophy was a product of a sharp mind that had been comprehensively betrayed and chose to understand that experience rather than simply survive it. The distinction between what he advocated and cynicism is this. The cynic decides people are not worth trusting and withdraws from genuine engagement. Machiavelli decided that trust, as most people practice it based on feeling, on chemistry, on the desire to believe, is a structural liability, and that replacing it with verified behavioral evidence makes the people who actually earn it infinitely more valuable, not less. Think about your current circle. Among the people in it, who has demonstrated their reliability in the way we've been describing, not through words, not through performance, not through a long shared history that has never actually been tested, but through behavior under conditions where another choice would have been available and easier? The answer for most people is a very short list. That short list is not a source of despair. It is a source of orientation. The work is investing in what is real, giving the people who have actually demonstrated loyalty the quality of relationship that loyalty earns, and building something with them that the patterns we've examined cannot reach. A table of 12 where 6 are hiding knives is exposure, not community. A table of 2 where the commitment has been proven under pressure is something closer to what every person sitting at the larger table claims to be building. Clear the space. Water what remains. The world does not reward the naive, it absorbs them. It does not reward the paranoid, it isolates them. The perceptive, those who can see the structure behind the performance and act accordingly without losing their own humanity in the process, are the ones for whom the game eventually makes sense. Be the one who sees. Not because seeing protects you from all damage, it doesn't. The damage that comes when you can see clearly is something you can learn from and move past. The damage that comes from the kind of blindness we've been talking about compounds, because you keep reinvesting in the same structures, calling each loss of trust an anomaly rather than recognizing it as the result of a pattern you had the capacity to identify. Walk forward with your eyes open. Observe what behavior actually reveals rather than what performance insists on. Trust the record, not the rhetoric. Build slowly, deliberately, with the people who have shown you, not told you, shown you that they are worth building with. That is the complete Machiavellian instruction. Not paranoia, not isolation. Precision. And precision, in the end, is the only real power no one can take from you.